Well, if Cats were a movie aimed exclusively at old women and extroverted gay men, it's only fair to call this one a movie aimed at grandfathers and 15-year-old boys, surely. Also, let's take a second and congratulate the video game industry, who are now officially off the hook for ever having to concern themselves with producing a feature film adaptation of Medal of Honor. That's right, 2020 begins with what could actually be the first video game movie to win an Oscar. We really do live in the darkest timeline. Obviously, 1917 isn't an actual video game movie, just as Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker wasn't either, but like with that one, I'm just being reductive in saying that given the opportunity to craft something unique and wholly original, the 21st century tentpole trend of simply phoning in objective-based quest levels in place of an actual narrative continues unchallenged, bolstered massively here with actual cinematic pedigree, and the fact that it's using a sustained and actual historical bloodbath to probably clean up next month when the Oscars roll into town. I'm going to say right off the top, though, that 1917 is a pretty good movie, but I'm saying that in spite of a whopping number of mitigating factors the average Joe probably won't notice at the sight of being dazzled by a gimmick that can literally be called money for old rope, given that Hitchcock popularized that exact gimmick in a movie actually called Rope. I mean, come on, this shit just writes itself sometimes, you know? That's right, the crack with 1917 is that it's designed to look like a handful of unbroken single shots, and if you're still wondering how that works, think about like the opening of Goodfellas or even Spectre, also interestingly directed by Sam Mendes, who helms this one too. The story, for what little of it you'll actually be concerned with, involves two young World War I soldiers, George Mackay and Dean Charles Chapman, who are dispatched with mere hours on a mission across no man's land to try and head off an assault by a cut-off British colonel on what he thinks is the retreating German army, but doesn't actually know is a newly fortified enemy front that'll wipe out his men in seconds and set the Allied war effort back beyond recovery. And all of this is done in what's essentially 3 shots, or it's meant to look like it at least. To be honest, if you even know the faintest thing about digital editing techniques, it's actually not that much of a feat, but goddamn if it don't look good on the big screen. And therein lies the rub, because that spectacle, and it is spectacle, it's got Roger Deakins as DP, so of course it looks the business, but it's overpowering enough that the hype already has drowned out the reality that this is a great honking war drama intended to be stuffed with pathos that really doesn't have any. For one thing, the script is drivel, the dialogue's poor, it relies on expositing character specifics instead of actually providing character development, and it's hung on 2 actors who astonishingly lack anywhere near the effort to keep it afloat. For the record, that almost hurts me to say about George Mackay, an actor I like very much and whom I'm pretty sure most people still just think of as Bromley from Pride. Sidebar, if you've not seen Pride, see Pride. It's fucking brilliant. Mackay's a great young talent, but quite what direction he's been given here beyond imagine Nicholas Lyndhurst was in the trenches, I honestly couldn't tell you. It's all just dumbfounded looks and stilton delivery, which, to be fair, is more than can be said for Dean Charles Chapman, whose casting as the comically ineffectual Tommen Baratheon in Game of Thrones may well have been less a case of casting and more just introspection. Maybe if they'd given Mackay someone with actual ability to play off of, this could have gone the other way, who knows, but they didn't. And so here we are. World War I first-person shooter and our NPCs are Rodney and a moist flannel, but hey, gimmickry! I'm being harsh, the gimmick does work. I mean, it must, otherwise there would in no way be the galactic level of hype and awards contention surrounding this thing. To be completely fair, Mendes directs the hell out of this. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of balls in the air as far as a production this complex goes, and he demonstrates time and time again here that he is more than up to that challenge. Helped in no small measure, though, by Deakins' genuinely breathtaking cinematography that sort of wonderfully contrasts both the grim aesthetic of the horrors of war with some of the gorgeous, untouched scenery around it, and there's an epic score by Thomas Newman as well. Can't fault that. Absolutely contributes to the bombastic and visceral thrill of what's going on, but again, Rodney in a damp rag with a terrible script. For me personally, it's a great effort weighed down by flaws that still manage to poke through despite genuinely breathtaking filmmaking. Filmmaking so good that those flaws managing that is no mean feat. There's an all-star cast of cameos dotted throughout. Obviously, you can't miss Colin Firth and the marketing, and there are a few more dotted here and there as these things tend to have, but it's all a bit sub-Private Ryan. I mean, remember how that did this? With a gimmick like 20 years ago, but that movie had good writing. And an amazing performance at the centre of it. Not as amazing a performance as Roberto Benigni in Life is Beautiful, obviously, but then again, who could have predicted so many Academy voters spoke Italian, eh? It's well made, though, and you can't deny it'll work gangbusters for the two audiences undoubtedly set to lap this kind of content up, which is arguably old-timers and their console-obsessed teen grandsons, but will I watch it again? Probably. In the run-up to awards season, maybe, sure. But even then it'll be largely from the revised perspective that I'm watching a technical exercise instead of a film in its own right. A brilliant technical exercise, don't get it twisted, but a technical exercise all the same. Just a 4-star one featuring young Nicholas Lyndhurst and a moist flannel, and that'll probably win the Best Cinematography Oscar. But anyone who tells you it's a brilliant film needs to see more films and also stop being dazzled by shiny objects. Meanwhile, with all the hoopla over Joker at the Venice Film Festival last year, you may well be unaware that the festival also saw the debut of a movie about Gene Seberg and starring Kristen Stewart, imaginatively entitled Seberg. If you're familiar with Seberg's story, which I wasn't overly, to be honest, you'll know which story to expect, but for those of you in the dark as I was, it's the story of how Seberg, having become an icon of the French New Wave after starring in Jean-Luc Godard's Breathless, began to support and associate with the Black Panther Party in the late 60s, which then made her a target of the FBI's counterintelligence program and the victim of a sustained effort to monitor, curtail, and, well, generally discredit her in the eyes of the public. As a story, it's frankly amazing we've not had this one adapted for the screen before, and there's a hell of a roster involved alongside Stewart that includes Anthony Mackie, Vince Vaughn, Zazie Beetz, Jack O'Connell, Margaret Qualley, and Cole Meany, who makes any movie at least 5% better simply by existing. He's Cole Meany. Australian director Benedict Andrews is behind this one, hailing from a script by Joe Shrapnel and Anna Waterhouse, and while it's obvious there is an interest in delving deep into what made Seberg tick and exploring just how she rather understandably began to unravel during all of this, the film itself lacks both the textual and visceral momentum to really do it any real justice, something you definitely begin to see dragging it down the third act when it starts needing to wrap the story up and just races for the finish line despite the wealth of the tale left undisclosed by that point. Stewart's brilliant in it though, can't fault her, absolutely top shelf performance, but as with most of her really great performances, it's tucked away behind yet another film maybe only 5 cardigan wearers and the regulars at your local art house cinema's OAP discount day will actually wind up seeing, and even then, if we're being really honest, she, like Claire Foy, has begun to rely far too heavily on the whole tremble with smeared mascara motif, which is particularly disappointing considering I only recently discovered, thanks to Charlie's Angels, that she has some pretty solid comedic chops and popcorn-friendly range when she wants to. Brilliant performance, as I say, but more of the same in that exact way that you don't particularly need to see Benedict Cumberbatch play an antisocial intellectual for the 80th time to just know he'll undoubtedly have been great in it. One thing I absolutely wouldn't have predicted though, rather like Jack O'Connell in this. Even though, and this is obviously way more of a fault of the film, he winds up having way too much of a role as the FBI audio tech tasked with spying on Gene Seberg in a movie about Gene Seberg. Imagine like half of Pretty Woman had been about Hector Elizondo's love of concierging. It's kind of that level of misguided, but O'Connell, pretty damn good all the same. Never liked the guy in anything before, always found him pretty one note. Seems he found a second note. Well played, sir. But I would like to see a better second attempt at this somewhere else, even though I am annoyed they wasted a great Kristen Stewart performance and this cast on this particular one. 2 stars for the performances, but the film's just not interesting. It's lifeless, and for a film that centers on illicit surveillance, it's amazing how little interest you'll have in anything it says or does. Welcome to awards season. Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, rate, and review.